Yes, I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Geneva School of Economics and Management, and my job is to first do research on collective intelligence and also besides on cyber risks, which is not a topic of interest here. And on the operational side, my job is really to run this space, the SDG solution space, as a place for collective intelligence, for making students and people who want to learn about innovation for the SDGs do and make things for a better world, for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay, nice. Would you define yourself as a hacker maker?
Not really. To be honest, I'm a researcher who is really interested in the behavior of hackers and its makers. I believe there's something very strong in the way they organize, the way they are producing knowledge and artifacts and innovation, and we should get inspired by these people. So I really understand their spirit, which is a spirit of freedom, of self-reliance, of collective intelligence, of sharing, of being open source, and also kind of a playfulness that you do things because you like them and because there's fun. And sometimes, when needed, I can certainly borrow this spirit for my own use. So when we set up the solution space, for instance, we really took care of first, before having any furniture or any equipment, to make sure that there would be this hacker spirit in this, or the maker spirit in this space, and to give a good sense of community. Yeah, because especially the hacker spirit is really borrowing from science. You really expect people to do things that they like. We call that task self-selection. People are going to do things they are intrinsically motivated for, but at the same time, because they publish publicly and open source most of what they are doing, or if not all what they are doing, there is this possibility to review what they've done and to build upon and to improve through what we call iterative innovation, and this can be done by the crowd, by people all over the world. And this is very strong because it brings a lot of transparency, accountability on whatever innovation is done, and I believe this is a way for making the world a better place.
Could you explain us what is a hackathon and what it consists, what happens in those places?
Yeah, a hackathon is a special. It's kind of a special moment, I would say, of 1 day or 2 days, or of intense, I would say, burst of activity, where people from different horizons, with different culture and expertise backgrounds get together, and they are going to try to find concrete solutions to outstanding challenges in a topic that is of interest. So, for instance, today there's a preparation meeting for a hackathon called Refugees at Work, which goal is really to be to have refugees empower themselves through innovation for making their life better and easier in Switzerland. And this is one example. There are many examples. So there is always a discussion about whether a hackathon should be something technical and for geeks, or only for computer developers. This is true that there is a big track where we consider hackathons as something for technical people, for software developers or hardware makers. But at the same time, here in Geneva, we have a more relaxed version or conception of a hackathon, where we really want to also tackle social innovation problems, or scientific problems, or technology issues, but more in a broad sense, in a way that it relates to society.
Okay, and as you said, we can see a lot of hackathons going on here in Geneva, for example, but sometimes we find a hard time in the follow-up of them, like to measure what happens after hackathon and after like the discussion that go in there. So do you think that there's a way in which we can improve this practice for making them like more effective, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very complicated question. The problem is that the people who organize hackathons, they get to focus their energy on organizing the hackathon, and then they're going to lose energy in following up with the projects. And maybe that's not their role. You get a role for organizing the hackathon, and then beyond that, there should be other structures or other institutions that can help continuing the projects. But so there's first this problem of documentation, that actually things continue, but no one is here to witness them. That's the first thing. Then, of course, we have to accept the idea that when we get together with people of different backgrounds, again, expertise or cultural backgrounds, sometimes the idea is never going to get concrete into a prototype or something that can fly. Okay, is it a failure? Or is can we just maybe consider that as a learning moment and that did not deliver, but it doesn't matter because in the end people learn doing to get something together. I got this example when I was at UC Berkeley, that I was interviewing people who were doing some kind of hands-on summer school on data science, and one of the organizers said, "Oh yeah, actually I did nothing during this moment." But I said, like, down the road, was there something that this moment brought something to you? He said, yes, I met a friend over a beer, and then 6 months later we met again and we decided to work out a new project together that was inspired by this summer school. So the point I want to make here is that actually even if you fail at learning, even if you fail at making a prototype, you can get this opportunity of a social encounter that is going to bring you some added value in the future. So you really see that the hackathon is something which is it's a complex construct in the sense that of course, there's this expectation of delivery, but there's also an expectation of learning. There's an expectation of social encounter, and this is exactly what we want. That people come with different motives and with different expectations, and maybe these expectations are going to be fulfilled, maybe not. Maybe they will get something else than what they expected, and that's perfectly fine. And our idea is that it doesn't really matter. The output is not the primary goal. It's more to build a culture of innovating together and sharing together. Now, on the output, this is not really true that nothing happens. If you go to the University Hospital, they organize a hackathon now. I think out of 6 projects, 4 are going to be financed by the venture part of the University Hospital. Here, the Refugees at Work, they finance. They are going to help 2.5 projects. So I don't know what it means to finance a half project, but this is the point, that actually the return, when you get a good structure and follow up, some projects continue.
Very nice. We can see that investment in science, tech, and innovation are still mainly driven by economic factors. Or incentives. Do you think that there's a way in which we can turn this into a more purpose-driven approach in order to achieve social goals?
Well, I think there's a need for that. I read an article this morning that in France, 20% of people say that they are doing what they call bullshit jobs. That they are doing jobs that make them money to pay for their mortgage, to pay for their loan for their car, just to make a living. But they believe that their job has nothing really, is bringing nothing to society or to themselves intrinsically. And you can really feel in the article that actually there's a lot of frustration with that. And I think you get to have like more and more, especially the highly educated elites now and the young people, they say, well, we want to have a good salary, but not only that, we want to also have we want to have a good life, but we also want to have to do something for impact. We want to have a purpose in what we are doing. And I really see an emerging generation of young people who believe that actually the purpose is something that is key. And I mean, of course, money, getting a decent salary is something that everyone should get, but this is not the end of the story. So I believe there's really a market, quotation mark, a market for people who want to do things with purpose, and we are really terribly in need of that. I mean, why? Yeah, I mean, there's just a market for that. So you're talking about economic forces. Well, this is the economic forces of having a purpose.
At the beginning, you mentioned about SDG solution space. Could you tell us a bit more what happens in this space and which are the future prospects for it?
Yeah, well, the solution space is a part of a maker space, a co-working space for education purpose that is run by the University of Geneva as part of an initiative called the Geneva Tsinghua Initiative for the practical implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is a partnership between the University of Geneva and the University of Tsinghua, the leading tech university in China. And the goal of this space is really to rethink the way we are educating and our students learn about innovation for the SDGs. So with a purpose, as you were asking before. And the two main tracks we want to push is what we call hands-on learning. So it means students are going to learn in a way that they can experiment and practice, and through this practice they're going to have to build a better sense of what they are doing and what they are conceiving, and whether this conception that is at school is usually remains very abstract, or it gets to be concrete, and or you learn from these concrete artifacts to fix them, to make them better, or to decide, oh no, this is not a good thing, I'm just starting over and doing new things. And then the second part is what we call challenge-based learning, is that actually it's a bit the hackathon spirit, where we say, okay, actually we are going to do things where we're challenging ourselves, but also between each other to make things better. So it can be, there's no formal definition of challenge-based learning. If you talk to an education science person, they will tell you challenge-based learning doesn't exist, there's no definition. But the way we see it is well, there's sort of the idea that first, the challenge is something that is fundamental to science. The idea is that when you get some results, you're going to publish them, you're going to show them to the world, and people can come and challenge them. And the challenge is, when successful, shows the weaknesses of a theory, of some results, or if the challenge is not successful, it helps bring more trust in the theory or in the results. So both sides are positive, because the first might trigger some changes and improvement, and the second one is just bringing more trust that actually the results are strong. And this process of what we say in statistics, not being able to reject the null hypothesis, so this kind of thing that actually students really much struggle about, this idea that what you want to do is not being able to reject the possibility that there's no result. This is something that of course makes students have a very hard time, but this is at the core of science. And I think the challenge-based learning is this part. And the second part is this idea that actually we also have to learn to be competitive and at the same time collaborative. So all our idea, at least here our definitions, is what we call co-petition. The idea would be really that people collaborate and at the same time they are in competition on delivering new innovations for the SDGs.